Mark Kotsay's worshiping at the altar of the 100 pitch count limit is at the heart of another loss for the A's. That's next on Curveballs and Changeups, a baseball podcast straight out of Sacramento. I'm Steve Harmon, and this is a podcast for A's fans and baseball fans in general. I played the game, once hit a grand slam home run in an over 30 baseball league. I covered the Bash Brothers A's as a sports writer in the 1980s and early 90s. I've been a baseball fan since 1967 when the kid down the block introduced me and my brothers to the game. And my first major league game was at the Oakland Coliseum in 1969. A note, I'm doing separate episodes for the A's and Giants now. You can listen to both wherever you can find podcasts. Another loss for the A's. That's 9 in a row today. With the Philly coming to town, doesn't look like their losing streak is in any kind of jeopardy. But once again, it's Mark Kotsay who should be taking the blame for taking out his starting pitcher just because he was about to touch that third rail of Major League Baseball, the 100th pitch. Luis Severino had gone 6 innings, walked none, given up just the 2 runs, and had a 5-2 lead, and he was still throwing 98 miles an hour. But because Kotsay is so devoted to that 100 pitch count limit, he was gone, and so was the game. I asked this question a couple weeks ago in this podcast. When will Major League managers ever learn that the 100 pitch count limit is arbitrary and it puts a terrible burden on their bullpen? And it is at the core of losing a lot of games. I asked this when the A's still had a winning record. They had come home riding high off a road trip where they'd won 5 of 7, and they'd just taken the first game of the homestand over the Seattle Mariners. You remember that. And then they blew a 3-2 lead in the 9th inning when Kotsay handed closer duties to Tyler Ferguson, who, remember, was throwing in his 4th straight day. This was a game that Kotsay took out starter Jeffrey Springs after 5 innings and 98 pitches, once again placing the burden on the bullpen like he'd done all year. That was the day he didn't want to throw Mason Miller on back-to-back days, but it started the A's on this inevitable roll down the hill. I also said in that earlier podcast episode that I could trace Kotsay's overuse of the bullpen from opening day, that his decision to go early with the bullpen and easy on his starters meant the bullpen would be overused and overexposed all season long. I went game by game over the previous 10 games there when the A's were actually winning, when Kotsay had put the burden unnecessarily on the bullpen. That's when the relievers averaged nearly 4 innings a game. They're still holding up that pace. The starters were not being stretched out. They're still not being stretched out. Maybe Kotsay was waiting for the warm weather. Well, it has come, and he still hasn't changed. Turns out Kotsay is a dime a dozen manager who goes no further than the conventional wisdom of the day. Thou must halt your starting pitcher at 100 pitches, no matter how well he's throwing and no matter how dire the situation is for your team. I mean, you're on a huge losing streak. You have a chance to win. Ask your starting pitcher to give you one more inning. And you know, Kotsay did say after the game that he was planning on using Mason Miller for 2 innings, so you could have gone straight from Severino to Miller. I asked the question then, and I ask it now. Do you want to win a game? Or are you so sure that you're going to damage the arm, if not the psyche of your starting pitchers, that you're willing to put the ball in the hands of a raggedy arm bullpen that really is just a group of young pitchers who are still trying to find their way? There's nothing proven about them, but you do have a proven veteran on the mound today who could have gone another inning. I asked then, how long is this sustainable? I said that 2 weeks ago it felt like Kotsay needed to start asking more out of his starting pitchers. I said maybe Kotsay should have a meeting with his starting pitchers and tell them if you can't figure out how to economize your pitches and get, your pitch count down, you're just going to have to learn to gut it out after that magical 100th pitch. Now, of course, let me just stop right here and say it's not all Kotsay. Obviously, it is the game of Major League Baseball. It is the analytics departments that have put this law down in baseball, and nobody veers from it. Wouldn't it be great if a manager finally took on this conventional wisdom and we found out the truth that starting pitchers should be built for endurance and longevity, have been in the past, could be in the future? He keeps saying it's a shame that the A's wasted another starting pitcher's good performance. But it's not like those decisions are out of his hands. Or are they? Maybe they are. Maybe he's just, doing what is being asked of out of the front office. Maybe he has no hand in it at all. Or he could do something about it. He could start working his starters harder, expecting more out of them, showing the front office that actually starting pitchers should go deeper. Unfortunately, it looks like he's a lost cause when it comes to that. And let me tell you what, I want to also turn my focus to the media, the reporters. Of course, the reporting pool for the A's is very small. You don't have many reporters covering the A's on a day-to-day basis. So it's just a handful of them. And they're all young, and they're all trying to make their way, but they're scared to ask the question. Maybe they don't even know that it's a question to ask, but they don't ask it. They don't ask, why didn't you stay longer with Severino? Okay, you know what I did today? I actually wrote down entirety the questions that were asked of Kotsay in the post-game show. And here it is. Here's a sampling, and I've got some annotations to help with the subtext. All right, the first reporter, right off the bat, said, quote, I know you mentioned yesterday about this stretch going to be the perfect storm of things. Today you get Severino, good outing, and Grant Holman's been so good for you all year. Here's my annotation. Offering Kotsay an alibi there, thank you. Is that just a sign of how things are going of late? In other words, here, let me write up a quote for you. Kotsay, ever appreciative, said, yeah, we're in it right now, definitely. The outing we got by Severino was what we needed, which implies that they didn't need any more from him. They did need more from him. And then he kept on going, this one hurts, as he said many times now. Back to him, because he threw the ball so good today. And for him to walk off the mound in the sixth, turn the ball over to Holman, who's been great like you talk about. Here's me, sure, but in high leverage spots? I mean, Holman has been used in, kind of middle relief, afterthought type roles. He really hasn't been put in high leverage spots. By the way, where was Sterner? I guess he pitched an inning in 2/3 and 29 pitches 2 games ago, but he was not available. And then continued on with Kotsay's quote. Just some missed location. A ball he was trying to get down and away to Turner Ward, to get a ball on the ground, and it runs back over the middle, and it's over the fence. Yeah, just happens to be over the fence. And next thing you know, he said, like, who had even thought that was a possibility? Next thing you know, he says, you're down again, and we continue to try to push. Continuing with Kotsay, you get to the point in the game where you have it set up that you think you'll be able to use Mason Miller for 2 innings and push him to get out of this thing. We just couldn't get it there. Then why not let Severino get through the 7th to take you straight to Miller? All right, another reporter question. Obviously, with Severino, and I don't mean to push on this, but there's a lot of talk about the home starts. What did you see from him today that helped him pitch, perform better? I mean, what he really wants to ask is, I think he really does want to ask, why didn't you keep him in? Kotsay's answer was, blah, blah, blah. Another reporter question. More missed opportunities, but, okay, here, let me frame this question to give you a chance to avoid criticizing your hitters. More missed opportunities, but these last 3 days, is that an encouraging sign, at least going into this weekend, that the offense maybe is starting to swing a little? Kotsay, blah, blah, blah. Reporter question. You have another streak, 9 straight games without a mistake, or without an error, etc., etc. Kotsay, yeah, we had a lot of balls get between our infielders, and we hit a lot of balls right at people. So I'm sorry, there's no accountability here. Maybe everything is fine. Maybe we're supposed to just go ahead and accept a losing streak of 9 games, and maybe we're hurtling toward 100 losses with not an issue, not a problem. And then reporters' questions were just as banal to Severino. What did you do differently? Are you happy you didn't walk anybody? Can you explain what you meant when you said you liked the mound in San Francisco? What can you do to stop the losing streak? Oh my, oh my. Nobody asked, could you have gone one more inning? Even the previously tough old school guys, Chris Townsend and Steve Sachs, on the post-game show, A's Cast, they played it soft in their analysis. Townsend, this is a game you should have won. Sachs, the other team, when you take him out, right, wrong, or indifferent, it doesn't matter. No, it's just plain wrong. Back to Sachs. When you have a guy that's going good, when you take him out, the other dugout has a big collective sigh of relief and is saying, we now have a new perspective, a new lease on the game. And then Townsend, that's always a tough call. You're right around 100 pitches. For some reason, that's the magical mark, and they like to take out your starter. He's your best arm, and you go to your bullpen. That's as far as he was willing to go. It feels like Townsend and Sachs have been kind of zipped up a little bit by management and told to take it easy on that analysis. Here's a little nugget I found on Baseball Reference. Overall in the major leagues, hitters have an average of around 245 on the first 100 pitches off starters. From the 101st pitch on, they have hit only 189. I know it's a small sample. It's only, 148 at-bats because not too many pitchers are getting the opportunity to pitch after 100 pitches. But look how effective you can be if you stay in. Okay, so, and I don't want to put this all on the bullpen, but their numbers really have been pretty bad. They're 28th in all of the major leagues with a 5.69 ERA. They have a 1.68 WHIP. That, what that is walks and hits per inning. A good WHIP is about, a real good WHIP is 1 every inning, 1.00. A pretty good WHIP could be about 1.25. After that, it starts getting about too much traffic on the base paths. 1.68 is a lot of traffic. And their 106 walks leads the majors, so that's an explanation for that. Since May 5th, that fateful day when the A's blew what should have been a win over the Seattle Mariners that I referenced earlier, that started their 2-13 slide. But since then, the A's relievers have a 8.44 ERA. That's 55 earned runs in 58 2/3 innings with a 2.05 WHIP. That's how many base runners opposing teams have per inning against the A's bullpen. Even if you take out that 19-2 debacle against the Dodgers, the bullpen's ERA is 6.39. That's 36 earned runs in 50 2/3 innings. So in that time, there were 4 games the A's actually coughed up a lead. One was that 3-2 lead the A's had in the 9th inning, but lost 5-3 to Seattle. The next day, they had a 5-0 lead in the 4th inning against Seattle. That was whittled down to 5-4 into the 8th inning, and they wound up losing 6-5. They lost that 1-0 extra inning game to the Giants on the Mason Miller bases-loaded walk to Wilmer Flores. I blame Kotsay for intentionally walking Mike Yastrzemski to load the bases and putting Miller in that tough spot. By the way, that's the last time Mason Miller has had an opportunity to pitch. Get him out there. Let him pitch the 7th and 8th inning, or the 6th and 7th innings. If you're going to take your starting pitcher out and you want to hold it down, get him out there. Let's try a little Raleigh fingers action, maybe. A 2-1 lead they had against the Giants in the 8th inning that they lost 3-2. That was Tyler Ferguson again when he gave up 2 earned runs on 3 hits in 2/3 of an inning. They did get 6 scoreless innings from the bullpen in a 4-3 loss to the Angels earlier in the series. And the A's were close against the Angels Wednesday when they were down to 6-5, but then the bullpen gave up 4 late runs. And then today, the A's were up 5-2 after 6 innings and blew it. Overall, the A's pitchers have a 5.23 ERA. Only the Washington Nationals, Baltimore Orioles, Miami Marlins, and the historically bad Colorado Rockies have worse ERAs. And folks, it ain't going to get easier. The Phillies are coming to town. They're in the midst of a 7-game winning streak. Just finished sweeping the god-awful Rockies in Colorado. And Colorado, is the only stadium with a higher batting average than Sacramento. I saw that today. The Phillies are 32-18 on the season, the best record in the National League, second only to the Tigers in all of baseball. And here are the matchups, which are pretty foreboding. Friday, it'll be Zach Wheeler 5-1 with a 2.67 against lefty Jeffrey Springs. He's 5-3 with a 3.91 ERA. Saturday, it'll be left-handed pitcher Christopher Sanchez, who's 4-1 this year with a 3.10. And he will likely go against Jacob Lopez, just called up. He's had one start in the majors, and just so far this year, he's thrown in only 11 innings with a 3.86 ERA. But he's pitched very well in AAA Las Vegas, 3-0 record with a 2.33 ERA in 27 innings. And then Sunday, ex-A's left-handed pitcher Jesus Luzardo, who's having a Cy Young year at 5-0 with a 1.95 ERA, goes up against the rookie Gunnar Hoagland, who's in a bit of a kind of a slump himself. He's 1-2 with a 5.06 ERA. Some things to know about the Phillies. They are second in major league in the major leagues in hitting with a 265 batting average behind only the Dodgers. And they're third in on-base percentage at 340 behind the Yankees and the Dodgers. They have the major league home run leader in Kyle Schwarber, who has 17 home runs, plus Bryce Harper and Trey Turner. Need I say more? Now, I saw real brief commentary on how Colorado is bad for baseball. ESPN's Tim Kirkchin called the Rockies unhealthy for Major League Baseball in commentary he had today. And it is true. The Rockies have an 8-42 record. That's the worst 50-game start in history, on pace to the most losses, even more than the record 121 the White Sox had last year. The Rockies have a 160 winning percentage, so they're on pace for 136 losses, only 26 wins if they keep up their historical pace. So that's just a little perspective for the A's fans, I guess. All right, that's all I have for today. Thank you for tuning in to Sacramento's Curveballs and Changeups with me, your host, Steve Harmon. You can find Sacramento's best baseball podcast on Apple Tunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Odyssey, the podcast app, and wherever else you can find podcasts. Please hit the subscribe button so you can get notified when my next podcast is up. Leave some comments. I'll be glad to get into a discussion with you about whether the 100-pitch count is something to look at. I'm also on Twitter, or what some call X, and Threads, and post my episodes there. If you see it there, please retweet or repost and tell your friends. It would be great to grow our baseball-loving community. Okay, until next time, lay off the slider, low and away.